If we want to understand the economic effects of socialism, we need to look in socialist countries. North Korea would be a great place to look because we could compare it to South Korea and see how the two economies evolved after North Korea adopted socialism. But there's just one problem. There's no data for North Korea. A country refusing to report data is already a pretty good sign that things aren't going well. Without GDP data, is there a way that we can compare the economies of North and South Korea?
We can if we take a lesson from grass.
I'm going to simulate the Korean economies with grass. Step 1, steal some dirt from my neighbor's garden. Step 2, plant seeds from the same origin. Step 3, place the cups next to each other on the windowsill. So everything about these cups are the same. Same dirt, same seeds, same location. Which means we need to get to step 4, just add socialism.
This is a Bluetooth speaker that I had sitting around the house, and I've set up my computer to send socialist propaganda to the speaker that I can play to one of the cups. I've selected excerpts from Das Kapital, Mao's Little Red Book, and basically anything that appears on the front page of Reddit.
The socialist system will eventually replace the capitalist system. This is an objective law independent of man's will. Feel the burn.
That's not really going to work. So what does adding socialism look like? First, to shed light on North Korea, we need to wait until it's dark. We can indirectly observe economic activity around the world by looking at the Earth at night. I love this economics hack because not only are the images dazzling, this is something that you can do yourself on Google Earth. These images are helpful because the strongest light at night comes from electricity, and electricity comes from economic development. A great example of this correlation is in the Caribbean. Puerto Rico is an American territory, but if it were an independent country, its GDP per capita would be the highest in Latin America. At night, the island is completely illuminated. Moving to the west, we find the Dominican Republic, which is right in the middle of Latin American GDP per capita. The DR isn't as well lit as Puerto Rico, but we can still see multiple areas of high economic activity. Moving a bit farther west, we find Haiti, which is the poorest country in Latin America. Well, normally it's the poorest. Recently, it was passed by Venezuela, which was once the richest country in Latin America. I wonder what happened there.
Como se dice socialism?
Anyway, Haiti, unsurprisingly, has almost no light. So looking at these three countries, we have a strong correlation between light at night and economic activity. And here's the correlation around the world. So what do North and South Korea look like? North Korea is so dark, it looks like South Korea is an island. There's only one dot of light in North Korea, and that is in the capital, Pyongyang. That must be Kim Jong-un's divine powers just emanating to the heavens. Socialism has shrouded North Korea in darkness. So step 4 is to remove one of the cups from the light. After 2 days in darkness, I put the cup back on the windowsill so it could get some more light. After 1 week, this is what the two cups looked like. Can you guess which one was deprived of light? It's pretty obvious that it's this one. Why? There are fewer blades of grass, and the blades that do exist tend to be thinner and shorter than the other cup. Just like darkness affects grass, poverty affects our physical bodies. Here's the correlation across countries of average height and GDP per capita. The relationship means that if you had two random countries and you looked at the average height of the people within them, the one with the taller population would have higher GDP per capita 70% of the time. Do you want to see my favorite example of this? These girls are competing in a basketball tournament. The team on the left is from the USA, and the team on the right is from El Salvador. They're all 16 years old. If you had no idea about these two countries, which one would you guess has the higher GDP per capita? The difference of the GDP per capita between these two countries looks a lot like this game's final score, 114 to 19. At least El Salvador has Bitcoin. I'm going to show you the data for North and South Korea, but I want to give you a caveat. This method is imprecise and it applies to populations, not individuals. You can see this with the grass. The cup that was put in the dark still has a tall blade, and many of the blades in the light cup are short. If one person is taller than another, that doesn't necessarily mean their life was better. My brother is 15 months younger than me, but he's a couple of inches taller than me, even though we grew up in the same environment. Unless, maybe he's taller because my parents really did love him more. It's the average height that matters. Some economists looked at average heights for North and South Korea using a really clever strategy. They looked at defectors from North Korea who sought refuge in South Korea. North Korean socialism starts in 1945. So if you look at the men in North and South Korea born between 1935 and 1944, you find that North Korean men were actually half a centimeter taller than the South Korean men. The advantage disappeared in the first 10 years of socialism. Then, as socialism's influence and effects grew, the average North Korean man ended up being 8.3 centimeters shorter than South Korean men. We see the same trend for women. These differences in height reflect differences in quality of life. Socialism has destroyed the North Korean quality of life, depriving many of the food and resources they need to grow and develop. Meanwhile, South Korea's economy and people are growing and prospering. If you're interested in more disastrous economic systems, you should check out this video on the brutal economics of who bought slaves.